Kia ora, ko Louis Collins aho. Ngā mai ki te whare. Welcome to the House. This week, just gone in Parliament, was a Members' Week, when Wednesday evening is given over to debating non-government legislation. Because this puts a pause on government business, MPs were in the chamber on Wednesday morning to make up for lost time. The government didn't quite get through everything that they had intended to at the beginning of the week, with committee stages taking up most of that time. Still though, some interesting bills were progressed through this week, like the
Climate Change Response Emissions Trading Scheme Forestry Conversion Amendment Bill,
which had its second reading on Tuesday. The bill seeks to address growing concerns around whole farms that had been converted into exotic forestry land under the ETS. Despite the bill having a truncated period with the Environment Committee, National's Penny Simmons said feedback from submitters and committee members had prompted several technical changes to the bill.
Taken together, these changes reflect a bill that is more precise, more equitable and more aligned with our long-term goals. They show that we've listened, we've learned and we've improved. But more than that, they reflect an optimistic vision for land use in New Zealand, a vision where forestry plays a vital role in our climate response, but not at the expense of food production.
In its first reading, Labour offered very careful support for the bill, citing the desire to carefully work through some of their perceived issues in Select Committee. On Tuesday, the House got to hear whether in fact that desire had been fulfilled. Here's Deborah Russell.
It does not necessarily achieve that goal itself. That conversion can still happen. It does not necessarily protect all of our soils in the way that they need to be protected. And it does not really solve some of the problems with the ETS, with the role of forestry in the emissions trading scheme. So we will support the bill, but it is a margin call.
Given that marginal support, you can probably expect an amendment-heavy committee stage. Because the final quarter of last year was the government's infrastructure-heavy quarter, a lot of those bills are coming towards the end of their legislative journeys at the moment. Among them is the
Public Works Critical Infrastructure Amendment Bill,
which aims to speed up the acquisition of private land desired for projects listed in the Fast Track Approvals Law or under the Roads of National Significance Programme. That bill was fortunate enough to go through both its committee stage and third reading this week, meaning it will likely be law by the end of next week. In farewelling the bill from the House, Minister in charge Chris Penk signalled that there was more public works reform to come.
This bill is the start of changes to improve the Public Works Act. A further bill that I intend to introduce later this year will propose broader changes to the Public Works Act to improve its efficiency, effectiveness and clarity on a broader range of projects, including improved landowner engagement and emergency provisions to assist and support the recovery from natural disasters. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone again who has worked hard to bring this policy to fruition. I look forward to the positive impact that these changes will make for delivering critical infrastructure and the consequent benefits that they will provide to our fellow New Zealanders through additional growth and productivity.
For the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, the bill's last dance in the House was an opportunity to lament its passing. Here's Maremino Kapakingi.
Tangata whenua in this country have given enough. This is a quote from Patricia Grace, who in 2014 defeated the government in 2 court cases after they attempted to confiscate her whānau land to build the Kapiti Expressway. The thing at the moment is that public works is a dirty word. It has been for some time. That story expresses that. And coupled with the current reality of, I'm not sure what the number is, of particular bills that have been rammed through in the last little while that are impacting directly on Māori lives, on hapu Māori and on iwi Māori, Madam Speaker, the thing that is completely vanished down the toilet, if it was ever out of the toilet in this particular regard, is the relationship and trust that Māori individuals, Māori hapu, iwi, do not have. So the audacity to bring this up and using the same public works, those words, is, I don't know, it's a foolish and dumb thing, and so you're not gonna get the response from Māori that you think you deserve.
The last completed stage of the week was the Summary Offences Demonstrations Near Residential Premises Amendment Bill, which prohibits mounting demonstrations or protests outside someone's house. Here's James Meagher, who is standing in for the Minister of Justice.
The offence created by the bill is very tightly formulated to ensure that it reflects an appropriate balance of rights and freedoms. The ability to protest is protected under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990, but all rights in the Bill of Rights Act are subject to such reasonable limitations that can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. This new offence is such a reasonable limitation. The new offence will not stop people from demonstrating or from expressing their views. What this new offence will do is provide reasonable boundaries about how people can demonstrate near private residences in order to better protect people's rights to privacy and the quiet enjoyment of their own homes. The law will only apply to demonstrations that are directed at a person and which occur near a person's private residence.
Labour's Justice spokesperson, Duncan Webb, thought the minister was underplaying the simplicity of the proposed law change.
So we in the Labour Party believe that when those two rights rub up against each other, when they knock into each other, that the right of seclusion, the right to be peaceful in one's home, has to be balanced against the right of political action. And we don't think that this government has struck that balance right. In our view, as we see the law, there are tools there that the police can use already and do use already.
That bill is now with the Justice Committee, who will soon be seeking submissions from the public. I mentioned earlier that this week was a Members' Week. Interestingly, it was one in which 2 opposition bills passed their third readings. It's often a surprise if one gets passed. If you want to know about those bills, listen to our program from Wednesday. Also on Wednesday, though, was the general debate, a time for MPs across the House to have a lash and make a speech about anything they like, really. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Some speeches are just parroting party policy, sometimes they're about local or electorate issues, and sometimes the two sides of the House go tit for tat, attacking each other. Here's Phil Smith.
Kia ora, ko Phil Smith aho. Parliament has rules about telling lies, and it has decades of careful interpretation as speakers have fought the good fight against disorder. The rules say mistakes are fine, inaccuracies are understandable, differences of opinion or interpretation are matters for debate. But lies, intentional lies, are one of Parliament's big no-nos, described officially as misleading the House, and doing so without self-correction is considered a contempt. Lies are taken seriously because debate is pointless if MPs can just make things up, especially government ministers. Parliament's oversight of government relies on abiding by a slightly archaic honour code. Also disallowed within that code is claiming another MP is lying, even by implication. It questions their honour, pistols at dawn and all of that. Any such claims have to be made formally and not in debate. All that background became relevant on Tuesday when Winston Peters complained about Chris Hipkins' description of tobacco tax changes.
Point of order, the Honourable Winston
Mr. Speaker, we have sat here for month after month after month while those members have repeated that lie in this House. I am seeking to correct it, and why do you think it's a matter of no importance?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of no importance. That's why your question stood and the Prime Minister was called to answer. Point of order, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Mr. Speaker, last week you ejected a member and named them for saying that they were struggling to find members with a backbone. How is accusing other members of repeatedly lying in the House any different?
Well, it is quite different in my head. One was directed very personally at members of Parliament. The other was a question about repeating a lie.
Usually the very word lie is dynamite in the House, and using it has long been just asking for trouble. Speaker's rulings, which guide interpretation of the rules, have 2 whole pages on the subject of claiming someone is misleading the House, including disallowing ways of saying lie or liar without actually using the word. Oh, and there are also rulings to say that it is just as bad to apply an offensive term to members of a party or a government as to an individual. So there's that.
It has never been the case that where a member has called another member or group of members liars, that they have to raise a privilege complaint to have the Speaker do something about it.
No. I'm sorry, you're pushing it too far. To suggest that there is something out there there is a lie and it's being repeated is not an allegation against any individual member or group of members.
Before we go any further, I should apologise for stories 2 Sundays running on Parliament's rules, and what might seem like small rulings about those rules from the Speaker. It may all seem very parliamentary geek and inconsequential, but they can make a lot more difference than you imagine. Quite small shifts in interpretation have the ability to alter the entire tenor of how debate occurs in Parliament and how MPs treat each other in the House, which in turn affects things outside. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not. The thing is, the MPs notice these small changes and act accordingly, which is really what this story is about. For example, later in the same question time, Chris Hipkins tried to leverage that new interpretation from the Speaker by interjecting with a shouted claim of lying, and in response, Winston Peters illustrated another reason why accusations of inaccuracy are not encouraged.
I'm happy to refute that allegation that what I'm questioning is based on a lie, because we can itemise with particularity to the last cent the $471 million they spent before we even got the job.
Trying to decide the truth of a matter on the fly is impractical, unless someone wants to fund a vast team of fact-checkers to adjudicate. And all of that gets us to where this ends up, which is interesting and definitely new, and I can't tell whether or not it's a good thing. It's possible it will become a rhetorical arms race of claim and counterclaim. Anyway, they say, play the ref. And so on Wednesday, having digested the Speaker's new approach to such accusations, Karen McAnulty stood to speak in the general debate, a debate when typically the Speaker presides.
They think that they can say that black is white and people will believe them. They think that they can say that they are going to make things better when actually, what have they done? They've made it worse. They think they can claim to have built 7,000 houses. That's what Christopher Luxon said in the House on numerous occasions. In the House, where you are bound by truth. How many have they built? 45. 45 houses when they promised. Nicola Willis signed a pledge and promised to build 1,000 net social houses in Auckland, and they built 45 in 2 years.
And that was just the warm-up. And note that under the more traditional interpretation of the rules, presenting evidence does not matter. You still can't claim a lie.
There's one thing that New Zealanders hate, and that is a lie. And if you were to extend that further, there's only one thing worse, and that is a repeated lie. And there have been repeated lies after repeated lies after repeated lies. What is interesting is that they think New Zealanders are thick, that they can stand there and tell them that the last government wasted money over COVID. They think New Zealanders are so dumb that they won't remember at the time they voted for it. They supported it. And in fact, I have a quote here from Paul Goldsmith. We obviously back this and how this money is spent. We support the government. We encourage them to go further. That's what they said.
Speeches in the general debate are generally given more leeway, but even so, that was unusual. I wouldn't be surprised if McAnulty had come along with a few arguments up his sleeve, expecting to be interrupted by the chair, but he was not. A couple of speeches later, his colleague Ginny Anderson spoke. She also focused on National having voted for COVID payments, and also brought along quotes from various National MPs on the topic. She avoided the L word, though. Instead, she tried a few alternative phrases that sometimes might also have been ruled out of order. She tested them out, though, like a focus group of one, just for the Speaker, to see what now could be gotten away with.
They have taken selective memory to a whole new level.
Have they what?
For National, history isn't something to be remembered, it's something to be rewritten. That's an example of political amnesia.
And
that is pure and simple hypocrisy.
that's running right along the touchline and trying not to step over it. Of course, the touchline shifts a little depending on who's in the chair. I think over time, as they settle into the role and possibly feel a little annoyance and frustration at one thing or another, every speaker tends to imprint their own shape onto the role, just a little, in different ways from each other and probably for different reasons. The ways they do that are usually unpredictable, but they're always interesting, and they can have unexpected flow-ons, which might be good or not. It can take time to tell. You've been listening to The House. E te whakaronga koe ki te whare. This program is produced with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Mā te wā.